stood around 7 feet tall. The eyes were nothing but black holes, but they had a kind of glow behind the darkness. It was last week, and I sat upon the cliffs overlooking Shark Bay. The sun had just set, and I saw someone walking upon the short sand beach below. There isn't much of a beach due to the relenting waves. It isn't a beach for swimming, and the fishermen overtake the area. It is approximately 20 feet down, and I watched a wavering figure growing closer. I knew it was an evil entity, and I wondered why he was showing himself to me. In an instant, I know what they were in life. It's a feeling that overtakes me. I don't have to see them to know. They don't need to be nearby. I just know. I think he was trying to scare me, but after all I have seen, not much phases me these days. So I sat back, just watching him, waiting for him to do his thing, whatever that may be. The last of the sun was gone, and the purple blue of the clouds was now a solid black. No moon, no trade winds, stillness. Perfect elements for a ghost to try to make a move, good or bad. I was his target. As I'm used to being sought out, all I can do is ready myself for the experience. It's not an afterthought to go into a prayer of protection. I close my eyes and ask God to surround me in a shield of strength. I can do nothing on my own. Of this, I learned long ago. When I opened my eyes, the entity was standing in front of me. His black eyes were piercing through mine, and I noticed his face was covered in tattoos. For a moment, it scared me, but then I stood face him. He backed away from me, and I knew then he was a very evil spirit. He tried to take on the appearance of a warrior, but his facade began to break down. I watched as his face became distorted. The skin became taut and skull-like, and I saw his true face behind the pretense he projected. I saw what he looked like in life, and he had been an ugly man. So sad the ugliness had permeated his soul as well. The entity was filled with evil. He had been a man at one time, but in his latter days, became obsessed with power and greed. He had hurt a lot of people in his journey, and he had a few people killed. I could smell the deaths layered upon him, like chains seen to the naked eye. You want to know how I know this? I can see it on their faces and bodies. It's like the words in a book. Each face, body projects life lived in shame, sorrow, greed, happy, sad, evil, and good. Anyway, this is how I am able to read them. It's as clear to me as a page filled with descriptive explanation. Every soul is read, heard, and helped, or avoided. I wanted to rid myself of this entity. He made my skin crawl in his being well. Best way to describe it, he made me feel like I was covered in feces. I almost wretched, and I started to walk away. Turning my back on him would be a bad idea, so I was careful to move slowly. I try not to speak to this kind of entity. If I can feel him, he knows what I am. Last thing you would want to do is anger an evil entity. Too late. He called me a few expletives, which I will leave out here, and tried to push at me with his energy. Of course, since I had my power of prayer working in my favor, it did no more than lift a few hairs from my shoulders. Kind of like someone blowing their breath on your face or neck. Creepy, but I kept moving towards my truck. I took a quick glance to see how much further I needed to go, and that was my mistake. The entity was next to me again, and he started to threaten me with death. Of course, he screamed it at me, and with detail. I'm too much of a lady to repeat what he said, as it was nasty and very vile. I didn't flinch. It wasn't the first time an entity had threatened harm, and wouldn't be the last. Having the beliefs I hold dear, I know these types of entities cannot harm me, and certainly cannot take my life. They can try, and this one did, when he saw I was not reacting to his threats. He mustered enough energy to knock me to the ground, but it's like being pushed over by a child. The key is not to be afraid. If you allow fear to enter the equation, he gathers this from you, and fear gives an entity power, which can be used against you. Never give in to fear, no matter how scary the situation. The entity hovered above me, and he did his best to look frightening. He did manage a few looks I had never seen before, but I didn't waver in my stare. He knew he couldn't hurt me, and he started to wail in frustration. My ears were burning from the high-pitched sound he made. It sounded like tin cans going through a grinder. Add to that, strange sounds, akin to sitting front row at a rock concert. It was painful and annoying, and loud as crap. Some entities are great at throwing temper tantrums, and this big guy, he was throwing a dilly of a fit. I sat up and rubbed my knees, brushing away the rock that stuck to them. I was getting mad now, and I told him so. "Get away from me, you evil one. You have no power over me. Go away." I yelled. My knees throbbed from where I landed, and I was ticked off. The entity looked shocked, and he seemed to shrink before my eyes. I found myself staring eye to eye with him. His black eyes smoked anger, but he was shirking away from me, moving back to the cliff's edge. "God will take care of your kind one day, no matter what rock you hide under," I called out as he moved away. Sometimes just using the word God will cause them to retreat. Retreat? This one zipped away. I saw him dart across the sand below, and in a blink of an eye, he was gone. Thank goodness. He took his nasty smells with him. I went home and took another long shower. My shower stall is filled with scented shower gels. It takes me a while before the odors filling my nose goes away. This is part of my gift I really hate. Any comments? Port Allen is a 12-minute drive away from my house. It's one of the few places I can drive and take my Chihuahua Terrier mixed dog. After all, she is just under 11 pounds, and an encounter with a large, unleashed dog is not a good idea. The harbor includes a large cove overlooking an area they call Shark Bay. Ominous title, but true. The sharks are attracted to this big harbor because of all the fishing that goes on. On any given day, there are 10 to 12 fishermen, with 3 to 4 poles jutting out and over the high cliffs. I drive past them all and head back to an area on the outskirts of the point. I had heard the rumors about the ghostly warriors, but I wasn't worried. This was probably my 12th visit to the location, and as a sensitive, I hadn't seen them yet. The section I chose to go this day was located a bit farther than my usual stops. The pale blue of the ocean was intense, and I was looking forward to climbing in and out of the lava rock formations. No sandy beach here. Driving isn't easy in this area because of all the rocks. There isn't a road, and you definitely do some off-roading through some pretty crazy dips. My dog, Faith, was bouncing and whining in the passenger seat, and she wanted out in a bad way. It made me smile to see her cute little doggy grin. I wasn't the only one who was ready for a walk. The day was bright and sunny, and the sound of the sea is music to my ears. Carefully maneuvering the truck between a couple of large boulders, I parked the car. Faith was really going crazy by this point, so I opened the doors and let her out of the car. Without a second look at me, she bounded out to a pathway covered in broken coral. I unlatched my seatbelt and stepped out of the truck. The trade winds hit me full force, and I leaned into the warm caresses. The sun, the trade winds. It couldn't have been more a perfect day. I looked around and realized the dog and I was all alone. No fishermen here. Grabbing a baseball hat from the inside the truck, I slammed the truck doors, locked it up, and headed off to find a dog. No doubt she was sniffing around the tide pools. "Faith," I called out. I spotted her little coconut-shaped head when it popped up at the sound of her name. She was in an area never occupied by the fishermen. I wasn't sure why, but the answers would be apparent in soon. Walking along, I took in the sights, the sounds, and the feel of white coral crunching underfoot. It was a really pleasant, comforting sound. Made me feel like I was one with the land, air, and sea. I came upon a section of white coral that was blinding. The sun had bleached it to the whitest of whites, and I sat down in the middle of it. It felt different. As soon as when I asked some of the local fishermen about the area surrounded by white coral, I was told it was a sacred spot. Finally, some answers. No one fishes there because it is bad luck to do so. The ritual I saw, it was intended to honor the gods of these long ago warriors. Reading.